Hey guys, got a very special interview for you today. I'm here with Laurie Berdahl. She's a doctor, a real doctor, not just people who play one on TV. And we're here to talk about the cross-section topic that I've been talking about a lot on this channel about Donald Trump and bullying. Laurie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Liana. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive right in. You have written an op-ed. You and your husband's a psychologist. Is that correct? Yeah.
He's a psychologist.
And you're a child doctor. You're an OBGYN. What first made you decide that this was something that was important to tackle?
Yeah. Well, I have been concerned for many years, seeing adolescent girls as well as women in my practice, that this process of what we call sexualization has been happening to females in particular. And what that is doing is basically making girls believe that their value is based only upon their physical attractiveness, which is defined by a very narrow spectrum, as well as value being defined by how sexual they are, and that they are only body parts to be used for other people for sexual purposes. And this is a well-documented phenomenon that is happening increasingly in our society. And not only are girls growing up believing this is true about themselves, but boys are believing it too. And it has incredibly detrimental consequences for our young people's health psychologically, as well as physically.
Now, when you say sexualization, people start going, oh, you're saying women shouldn't be sexy, women can't be sexy. That's not what you're saying at all.
Not at all. What we are referring to is an abnormal, unhealthy process that happens to children and teenagers, where they are growing up believing that they are valued by their sexiness, which should never apply to children.
Now, developmentally, what is a healthy age to sort of start exploring the world in that way?
Well, certainly adolescence, of course, is a normal time to start thinking about sex, about exploring sexual identity, about exploring sexual behaviors. The problem with sexualization is that it is not a healthy exploration of one's sexuality. It is having sexualization or sexuality imposed upon girls based on their physical nature, not being valued for being whole people who have thoughts and ideas and beliefs and feelings and talents and intelligence, but being valued only on their sexual appeal and sexual use and physical attraction. And that is incredibly damaging. And so we're not talking about sexiness of adult women here, or of adult men. We're talking about an abnormal imposition of sexual nature upon children and adolescents.
Yeah. Now, this is a difficult thing to sort of separate as well, because kids see the Alicia Machado beef, for instance. Kids see that. And she's an adult, but she was 19 years old at the time it happened. And developmentally, some would say she's actually still an adolescent at that point.
Yes,
right.
That's an excellent point. And I think that our neuroscience, our brain science, is clearly demonstrating that people are not mature yet. They don't make adult decisions. They don't handle emotions the same way until at least mid-20s. So we are developing slower than we thought we were in terms of being able to be in charge of how you're treated, what you think of yourself. And so that is mid-20s. And a teenager is not an adult. A teenager is an older kid. And we call people 18 to 25-ish emerging adults, developing still adults. They still need guidance. They still can be influenced by bad things cognitively in their brains, and in terms of how they behave, it can be still affected greatly. And so this is a person who is very still vulnerable to bad influences and to being misused.
Yeah. Now this is we have sort of artificially cut off childhood at 18.
Yeah.
And this is a huge issue in gaming, because when you're 18, you can play anything you want. And I mean, there is a huge difference, obviously, between something happening in a work of fiction, because kids are so media savvy now. And because I'm hearing this false equivalency in the press right now of it's in rap music. It's part of the culture, these attitudes towards women. But this is someone running for president of the United States.
Yeah.
As a doctor, how is that different?
It's different because children and teenagers and even emerging adults are greatly influenced by who they view as authority figures, people that they look up to or look to for guidance, for as role models. That includes parents, extended relatives, teachers, mentors, and yes, presidents. And they look to those older role models for guidance as to how the real world works, what is okay and what isn't okay behavior. So when the leader of the free world basically brags about sexually assaulting women because of his power, that is a strong, very unhealthy message to our youth who already are getting bombarded with all media forms, from television, movies, games, music, etc., in this sexualized ways and violent ways. We have clear evidence in the scientific literature that exposure to violence, whether it's sexual violence or any other violence, when you are developing all the way through young adulthood, clearly changes the way you behave with people, makes you more aggressive, makes you more violent.
As teenagers, you're
Yes.
saying. Yeah. And that's why we have age labels on media.
Yes.
Right? Like they're there for a reason, right?
They're there for a reason. And interesting sideline on that is that the more you label it mature, or you rate a movie R, the more likely your kids are going to want to see it. So it kind of, backfires, but at least, some kind of attempt to make parents aware that, oh, maybe I should think about this. And you should, look at those ratings, but unfortunately it sometimes makes it even more appealing. Kids are really looking forward to joining the adult world, and they are looking to media, and they are buying what they're hearing and seeing as the way that the world works and how they should behave in it. Okay. And extremely dangerous.
I gotta ask you why you think that is, that kids are in such a big hurry to grow up. It just, because I know that adults are like, no, like, enjoy your childhood.
Absolutely, man, grab it, take it.
It seems to me like even when I was a kid, 12 years old wasn't, oh my God, does this boy like me? Does my hair look okay? Do I have the right handbag? And now 12 years old is treated like adolescence.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. And our kids are under more and more pressure to behave sexually, to look sexual. I have 10-year-old girls in my seminars telling their moms, am I sexy? They're worried about being sexy. They're 9 and 10 years old. So this is a real problem that our whole society needs to deal with, because we're going to see the ramifications, a lot of which have to do with sexual violence, because kids who grow up hearing these messages that their worth is based on their appearance and sexiness are more accepting, both boys and girls, more accepting of sexual aggression and violence in their lives.
So exposing kids to this content at a young age is making them more vulnerable? Yes. Is what you're saying? Okay.
Absolutely. It makes them more vulnerable to being victimized as well as becoming perpetrators. We know the way that the brain develops. Mm-hmm. We all know, I think, generally, people accept the fact that parents really can influence their children, right?
That's accepted, right?
Was, that was the way it used to be anyway. Now research is showing that media and other societal messages, including from presidential candidates, may have more of an influence on parents because of the number of hours that our children spend with media and listening to media reports, including news reports and music, etc. And also because it is such a type of venue that is really influential. It's entertaining, it's exciting, it's whatever. It's outside of what we would view as real life a lot of times, but they don't see it that way. They see it as real life and something to aspire to, or that's the way the world works. And so it's incredibly influential. Yeah.
Now, what happens to young men in this equation? Because obviously all young men who are exposed to violence as teenagers don't go on to become predators. The numbers would just be, but I've seen just anecdotally as a lay person, a different effect. And I wonder if you've seen in terms of the expectations and the sense of what a real man is. Do you have any data on this?
Yes, we do. There is clear evidence that we are basically socializing our boys to be more aggressive in general and sexually aggressive. So it's becoming part of the male identity, unfortunately, to be aggressive, and that's how you show your manhood, and including sexual aggression. And there are many, many different reasons for that, from viewing it at home, in your own home, seeing your mother mistreated, seeing your sisters mistreated, domestic violence, but also media portrayals when sexual aggression is made to look enticing, it's made to look funny. So we are seeing, there's a book, Guyland, by Kimmel, excellent. And we quote in our book, Warning Signs, that he quotes a study that shows almost 2 out of 5 college males would commit rape if they thought they could get away with it. That's an astounding number. So we do think there is a trend toward increased aggressive socialization, including sexually aggressive socialization of our boys. And that has partly to do with that sexualization thing that I described earlier.
Yeah. So now, two things there. This is a very interesting statistic because, one, it's still a minority, but it's a large minority. On the other hand, did they know it was actually sexual assault, or was it behaviors that are actually sexual assault that they don't know? Because I've noticed that with this Trump thing, they're calling it sexual inappropriate, groping, unwanted touching. People seem unwilling to say the word sexual assault, but by law, that is what it is.
That's exactly right. Any sort of sexual content without consent is sexual assault.
Right.
It becomes rape when there's penetration of some kind. Mm-hmm. Sometimes researchers or national organizations will call sexual assault or do studies that include rape also. But there's this whole other realm of sexual offenses that are punishable by law, like sexual harassment, which is you don't even need contact. You can be made to think that you need to be able to take somebody brushing up against you sexually, otherwise your job is going to be in peril, or it makes you feel uncomfortable with all these sexual remarks. So there's all sorts of other non-contact experiences that are punishable by law also. Illegal. Sexual harassment is one of them. So sexual violence, by the way, the World Health Organization and a lot of our American national health groups are encompassing sexual violence to mean anything from inappropriate sexual comments without contact to contact experiences without consent to rape. So there's a huge variation in the amount or the types of violations that can happen.
Now, what you're describing is a very scary scenario because we have young boys, and I mean, let's face it, kids are kids at 13 to me.
Yes, they are.
Are becoming sexually active.
Yes.
And so you have boys who have been given an unrealistic, unfair expectation regarding sexual aggressiveness. You have girls that have been given the message that it's not okay to speak up on these things. This sounds like a recipe for disaster because they're committing acts that aren't okay without knowing they're not okay. And the first time anybody talks to another person is when charges are laid or when there's a police investigation. Have I got this right?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
You do. And it's especially important. And there are so many things that parents can do to counteract these messages. And I want to get that out there clearly. This is not something we have to accept. And there are solid practical ways that we lay out in Warning Signs, our book, that parents can counteract sexualization. They can counteract the risk of becoming a perpetrator or victim of sexual violence with the kids. Anyway, one of them is to talk to kids about sex from an early age and put limits on what they expect of their children from sexual behavior. Because they look to us, and it does matter what you say. So especially if you're allowing a 13 or 14-year-old girl to date, the chances for sex occurring are very high, and the chances of them being a victim of sexual assault are very high because they're 13 and 14, they're kids. They cannot possibly decipher what's a dangerous situation for me to be in. I'm alone with this guy. All of a sudden, I feel like I have to say yes, but I feel like I want to say no, and I don't know how to navigate this cognitively. So it's really important, and it's a great way to just put some of the risk off the table and just to say, hey, I expect you guys to wait till you're older, to start dating. And we didn't let our kids date till they were 16, and they were so glad because the pressure came off. The pressure was off. Otherwise, my 12-year-old son was like, they asked me at school, who am I dating? I'm like, dating? You're 12.
Yeah, my nephew came home from school one day with this project, this About Me project. He was 12, turning 13.
Okay.
And one of the things they asked him to talk about was a girl he liked. Tell a story about liking a girl at 12 going on 13. And I said, first of all, like, I try to joke, I try to take the pressure off with kids, and I just said to him, how do they know you're not gay? But he was really uncomfortable because he wasn't there yet. And that wasn't the parent. I mean, his mom was freaking. His mom was just like up in arms, which, that's tough for a parent. But I'm sitting there going, I said, it's okay that you're not interested in girls. Like, in fact, you should be interested in other things. You should be figuring out who you are before.
Being a kid that doesn't allow, childhood, I'm sure in the later stages can involve girlfriends and boyfriends, but the age of 12, my goodness, or 13 or 14 or even 15, it's really tough to take advantage of your full childhood when you are mired in the drama and the angst about, does he still like me? Does she like me? Who likes me? Do I have a boyfriend? Do I not? That takes away that freedom to enjoy just being a kid and having fun with friends. It's really unfortunate. Yeah.
Does it also take away the ability for people to make choices based on what they want to do as opposed to pleasing other people?
Well, certainly kids, including teenagers, they hardly know the difference between,
okay, that's interesting.
Someone, or am I doing this because I really want to? They don't know who they are yet, They're just forming opinions about things and who they are and what they want in life. And it's certainly teenage, adolescence is a time when you want to be liked and you want to fit in, and you're going to do stuff that you would never do when you're 25, just to try to fit in. And so to add sex to the mix, dating, it's just incredibly harmful, and it really takes away the innocence and when they should be having fun and not worrying about those sorts of relationships that they really aren't mature enough to handle in a healthy manner.
When do people developmentally have that sense of themselves as an individual?
Yeah, well, we think it's the early 20s. I mean, we know that people can still change. They would make different decisions still at age 26 than 21, apparently. So we think, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I sure did. I mean, I changed my field of study. I was going to get a PhD in genetics. And I'm like, nope, should have gone to medical school like I thought, so this is mid-20s. So you're figuring yourself out, and so to put pressure on kids where they will potentially be making life-changing decisions when their brain is not ready to do so, and sexual activity and dating is part of that, it's really unfair, and parents really do have a say, and they can say, because I care, I really want you to put that, just leave that till later. Be a kid. Let's have fun. Let's do, let's have friends, but don't worry about the romance thing yet.
Now, it seems like romance is completely removed from the equation nowadays, and that's a completely different topic. Yeah. But you talk about appropriate exposure to sexuality at a young age, and I find this very interesting because it seems like in terms of content for kids, we're going in the other direction. That we're combining, we're equating a woman having her legs bare with sexualization. And nudity and sexuality aren't the same thing. Wearing a bathing suit isn't an inherently dirty act, But now girls are getting Wonder Woman dolls wearing pants because the female body is somehow dirty now. And this seems like people are just trying to delay the conversation instead of having that tough parenting moment. So because this is difficult, because I see the desire to want to delay this stuff, but on the other hand, like, I've read things that if you don't talk to your kids about this stuff, someone else is going to, and that's the least thing you want. So how do you start? What is appropriate at what age? I'm sure there's some game designers right now who are going to be listening intently right now, but like, how do you start? What's appropriate? How do you separate, this is your body, it's okay, this is what it's going to do at these ages, and this is what you're going to feel, from that unhealthy sexualization that's pressure?
Right, exactly.
Right.
Well, it starts from very young ages. As soon as children can talk, you need to have discussions about safe touches and bad touches.
Okay.
Because predators are everywhere. And so to talk about that in very, very simple terms, as soon as they can understand, hey, buddy, you're swimming, say, and they have their swimsuit on. I just want to tell you, it's not okay. It's a bad touch if somebody tries to touch where your swimsuit covers. You know that, buddy, And so just a very simple thing. And I want you to tell me if anybody tries to do that. Okay, end of story. Nothing scary, nothing whatever. And then as kids reach about second grade, you need to have the talk, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the birds and the bees, where babies come from. And it's not like anything to do with like, the pleasures of sexual relationships. It's just a very matter of fact, this is what intercourse is. And sex is any touching of private areas. And it's not just this intercourse thing, which you need to discuss, and that's where babies come from. Then, very gradually, it's never one conversation. It is many conversations over time. Mm-hmm. And the one good thing about having such sexualized media now is it gives you unlimited opportunities to bring up appropriate sexual behavior and inappropriate sexual behavior, and what's healthy and what's not. So we recommend having these talks about what healthy sexuality is, which is discovering and dreaming about having, sex with someone in adolescence. That's going to happen. That's a healthy thing. Thinking about it is healthy. Masturbation's healthy, mm-hmm. normal. Dreaming about having a partner someday and about sex, all good, all healthy. You never want to shame kids for having these normal urges. What you want to do is encourage them to wait, to delay acting on those urges, and actually setting up rules for dating age, for being alone with other kids. And part of that is because sexual assault happens when kids are together. So it's a continuous conversation. Then, as far as body image and dressing, mm-hmm. girls are incredibly pressured now to show more skin. Okay, obviously. And I am so happy to this day that our daughter was a tomboy, huge tomboy, till she's like 13. And so that meant no girl clothes. Like if we went to a wedding, I had to buy her like a boy's pair of chinos. And I'm like, thank goodness, because that was the Britney Spears or whatever time when the midriffs were showing and the low cut. And so when a girl feels like she is dressing so as to attract sexual attention, uh-huh. or if people expect that her dress is in a manner to attract sexual attention, whether it's a short skirt or a low cut top or showing her belly button, when that is about getting sexual attention, that's when it becomes unhealthy, because boys don't do that, do they? They are respected and thought of for who they are as people, not their sexuality, not their sexiness. And so that's when the teen years is really important to have those very frank discussions about, I always recommend dressing for respect, fun, and comfort.
See, the comfort thing is an interesting thing, because we had a case up here in Nova Scotia, Canada, where a girl wore a pair of shorts to school because it was hot.
Yeah, sure.
She was dressing for comfort, sure. and was sent home basically for obscenity because she refused to change out of something that she found comfortable because the school determined it was too short.
Okay.
Now, this sounds to me like she was doing exactly what you're advocating, and this is something I encountered as an emerging adult, because I started working in the media at around, well, way young. I was competitive at 12, but and this is the thing, because I saw that, that beauty pageant thing. The dads walk in to the change rooms and they're looking around, and it's a room full of 15 and 16-year-old naked girls. And at the time we were like,
No.
should he be in there? But you've got 8 minutes to change between numbers. You're not thinking about whether that guy's, doing something appropriate. Now, and this is why I feel like I'm glad to be talking to you, because I feel like kids are getting caught from both ends. The girls are getting the messages that there's no right answer, and the boys are getting this message that you're expected to be aggressive, but watch out, because, some offensive word will rat you out. To, like, it's not so much it's that the messages conflict. And what do we do about that? Because it does, I mean, we talk a lot about girls, but as I've been talking to you, like, it must be so confusing for a teenage boy who is given all these messages that you're a man at 13.
When you're not.
When you're not. Life is way more complicated than it was, 6,000 years ago when they put that rule in. Sexual maturity, physically. And your body's not even ready. Just because you're having these urges, it's not ready for everything that comes with this. It's not as enjoyable until you hit, and so what do parents do? And I know you want them to read the book, and read the book, but for people who just sort of want a sample of where to begin, what do we do about these conflicting messages?
Well, you take opportunities when you can to talk about them, and like I said, watching a TV show or a movie. What do you think about guys who act like that? Or what do you think about how that guy treated that girl or that woman? What do you think about how she is dressed?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about, so for teenagers, that's the one good time to ask them questions. Otherwise, if you ask teenagers questions like, how was your day? How did your test go? They're going to shut down. But as far as these messages, seeing whether political events play out or whatever, ask, what do you think about that? Listening intently, praising them for anything that sounds like a healthy appraisal of equality, and judging people for things other than their sexuality or their looks is a great place to start. And then sharing your opinions and empathizing with how tough it is these days. Like you said, the conflicting messages, the social pressures for boys to be aggressive and for girls to be sexual is overwhelming. And they're just kids, and they're getting it from all sides. So empathizing, making yourself open to, hey, I'd love to tell you what I think, tell them, and then leave it and come back to it. You know what I mean? And I want to hear if you're ever, wondering about what I think about this. I'd love to talk about it. This is so important these days. I've got your back. I want you to be safe, and I want you to feel good about yourself. And so for girls, it's all about building up their self-esteem based on everything else but their physical appearance and their sexuality. And go ahead.
On the flip side, it's almost like the equivalent of physical appearance for girls is emotions for boys, that being sensitive is seen as a negative in young men. And this is just in my work with gamers.
Okay. Yeah.
These guys, when you get past the fear, they are creative, they are emotional, they ask really deep, interesting questions, but they're afraid to talk, and you're too sensitive or grow a thicker skin is something that comes out instantaneously. And personally, that's the most attractive quality in a man, is that inability, that ability to be in touch with their emotions. It really has less to do with appearance other than appearing clean,
Right.
But
I totally agree with you. Yes.
yeah, and this seems to be what most stable, mature, together women
Yes.
that I've talked, they say this, but that's not the message that young men are being sent.
No.
So
yeah. So you can, first of all, you can model what you think is important in healthy relationships in your own home.
Mm-hmm.
By talking about each other's days, by respecting each other's opinions, by not, making it all about you look hot today, and talking about valuing everybody, no matter their gender, no matter this color of their skin, no matter what else, just how your family and how you as a parent value people and how you want them to value people, because that is the road to happiness and happy relationships. Because when boys grow up thinking they need a 10, to be happy, maybe they'll take an 8 or a 9, but then when they're, getting to be older, maybe they have to switch, all that kind of stuff. You can actually verbally start these conversations and be prepared for kids to roll their eyes and go, oh, I know, Mom, or geez, and that's okay. That's cool. You got their attention, right? But you can just say outright what you think and challenge these unhealthy expectations and say, I want you to have the best relationships in your life. And so let me tell you, what I think and what I've discovered, with time. And so that I want you to have, what I have, or something like that. So you never make fun or tease them for what they think. You try not to come from any sort of control perspective, but more of a support, like, I want you to have great relationships and a happy life. And I'm going to tell you the secrets, because there's a lot of damaging messages out there. And it turns out that, if you're a sensitive, caring guy, that's the number one turn on, right?
Yeah. And
it's true.
And I don't think guys are empowered to define for themselves what a 10 is for them, because not every man likes the skinny blonde.
Yeah, exactly. With the big boots. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The preferences are all over the map, and I that disturbs me as well. But last question, because I want to respect your time, but part of the whole Trump bullying effect, and that is sort of the topic we're covering today, is the online phenomenon of social media, with this pack of who knows who they are, ready to just pounce on anybody who resists or even questions this nominee, including people from his own party, right? I mean, Republicans are afraid to say what they actually think about him because of blowback from people screaming angry. Online stuff like this is really significant. Kids are going to go online no matter what we do. How do parents encourage resiliency in kids in the face of this? Because it really seems like fighting a losing battle to let a kid get a Facebook account at 13, and then, like, the gloves are just off. They can be exposed to anything, and a parent really doesn't even know what's going on. So what's your advice for kids getting into social media?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, we advise from day one, when they get their cell phone, especially when it's a smart, or even when it's not a smartphone, but especially when they get their internet accounts, their social media accounts, their smartphones, you tell them, because you care and because there are so many dangers out there, you want them to have all the good experiences that come with these connections, but you want to protect them because you're their parent still, and you have their back, and you're going to help protect them from the bad. So that you need to be a part of their social media lives. You need their passwords. This is, it's a common misconception, I think, and I get it. It's a natural response to go, well, it's my kid's privacy. Well, this is a child. Even through the teenagers, this is a child who is basically having unfettered contact with complete strangers, to extremists, to whatever. So you have a right and an obligation to be a part of their social media world and help them take advantage of those positives, but also protect them. So having their passwords, tell them you will monitor texts, social media accounts, etc. We recommend you don't, and this is not just us, national organizations recommend that you don't let your kids download an app without your permission, so that you can tell if it's a fake one, that's going to give them. So you're telling them, hey, we want you to do like your friends are doing, but we want to make it safe so that you're not harmed. And then it's a great opportunity to say, how could I get harmed? Well, let's just talk about a couple things, kind of give them examples. So that way you can be involved, you can let them have the perks of it, but you can protect them. But you've got to tell them that you're going to be monitoring so it doesn't come as a surprise. And privacy is limited when you're a child. You still need, parents. I mean, this is a new dawn. I didn't grow up with 24/7 access to anybody in the world, and our kids now do. So it's really okay, and it's really good to be in their lives that way and share it with them. Also tell them what something dangerous looks like, how a predator behaves, who might be a predator, even though you think it's another girl in some other state, it might be a predator. So tell them all the facts very slowly with time, but just be involved from day one on each of these different types of platforms, so that you can let them enjoy the good part, but try to keep them safe from the other part. There are also lots of good monitoring companies that will help you, try to look for things like porn and predatory behavior and stuff like that. So, and extremism and that sort of thing. So
yeah, those are really interesting because you don't actually have to read your kids' messages. They alert you if there's something bad. So
yeah, and for sure to tell them about bullying and the two most important things to tell a parent about. And you want to tell them, this happens, and you want them to stay safe and to protect other kids. And that is that they really need to come to you immediately if they see somebody threatening to harm themselves or other people. Acts of revenge, in school. And we've fortunately been able to stop some plots here again in Colorado. It seems like we've had more than our fair share. So, making sure that they know, hey, this is a way you could save people too. So please let us know. Don't be afraid. And if you are bullied, this is what bullying is, and we want to hear about it. If you see somebody else bullied, we want to hear about it. You can't be expected to handle this alone. You're a big kid. You're going to need our help, and we want to be there with you and help you through it.
So you don't think that parents should let their adolescent children on Snapchat at all, because the entire purpose is the message disappears after 10 minutes.
I think that Snapchat is definitely more, and Instagram, I'm not sure how long that lasts. But I think that basically there are programs available that could potentially monitor that sort of thing. But if you ever feel like you don't have enough monitoring power, there's so many other ways to relay information and pictures. Why do you want to add another program? And if the more they complain that, oh no, you're being unfair, that I can't have 10 different social media accounts, including the one that disappears after 10 minutes, perhaps there's something you should be looking for. Because really, if they can text their pictures, to all their friends or on Facebook or whatever, but they're asking for this extra additional thing, maybe there's something going on there, so kind of pay attention to your instincts and don't be, persuaded by your children what is best for them. We're the parents, and we can still, just as long as we address it out of concern, you're not doing it to be mean. You're just doing it to know there's dangers out there, and you want them to be okay. And when they're adults, they can make those decisions. But, for now, that's your job.
Yeah. Last follow-up. When is it age appropriate to start easing out of that monitoring? Because I know people are going to go, oh, you're saying you should read your 18-year-old's messages. That's not what you're saying at all, right?
No.
Yeah.
We were done by that time because our children had shown a consistent pattern of us trusting that they knew what was safe and wasn't safe, that they weren't getting bullied, or if they were, they'd tell us.
Okay.
They weren't in psychological trouble, and if they were, they'd tell us. That their friends were okay, that we didn't worry about it. So it's a very gradual process of being able to check out of that constant or even spot checking, by the time they're 18. By the time they're in college, we really don't. We have one who's 21 now and a 24-year-old. So we have fortunately had a few years to build up that trust, to know that they know what's going on and they can protect themselves. And if they feel like they're, in danger, they're going to come to us because they know we care. We don't want to control them. We care. We're there for them, and we got their back. So they'll come to us. So we don't have to do that, all the time by then.
Laurie, thank you so much, Laurie Berdahl. Laurie, how can we find your book?
Amazon.com. Yeah, warning signs, how to protect your kids from becoming victims or perpetrators of violence and aggression. So all the different types of violence and aggression, not just sexual. and bullying that can affect your kids. Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Go to our website, warningsignsforparents.com. Give you lots of articles that we've been publishing. Our blog on Psychology Today, Warning Signs for Parents, so they can get lots of information. We have a ton of resources too for all of the typical problems that come up when you're raising kids or in your home that can affect raising kids. So there's a big resource page there too for people.
Awesome. Laurie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.